Hello and welcome back to the Paddocks. We're at the penultimate race of the season and we're at Lusail International Circuit for the Qatar Grand Prix. And what a race recap we got for y'all. On today's episode, we have Amy, Meg, myself, Melissa, and Chelsea behind the scenes. So let's get started with some track updates with Amy.
All right, y'all. It's another race weekend, and it feels yet again like it is another round of track updates. Coming into the weekend, FIA, in consultation with Pirelli, has made modifications to the circuit to avoid basically what we have dubbed the tire drama of 2023, because last year was disastrous at best. In preparation for the 2024 race, the FIA and Pirelli have worked together with the pyramid-shaped curbs and having their tips rounded off of the 16 corners at Lusail, including turns 1, 2, 4, 10, 12, 13, and 14. Last year, it was turns 10 to turns 14 that put the tires under the most amount of stress, and a gravel trap has been added to the outside of some curbs to prevent drivers from running too far wide. Now, that's kind of it for track updates, so we are going to get into kind of what we saw happening leading into the race weekend, and our personal favorites, specialty helmets, because if you've listened to us for any amount of time, you know that we love getting to chat about helmets. But I have what I would consider some somewhat breaking news. Maybe that's just me and Rachel as the Mick Schumacher girlies of the group, but in case anybody missed the news, Mercedes confirmed that, and this is a direct quote, reserve driver Mick Schumacher has chosen to leave his role with the team at the end of the 2024 season. Apparently, he decided to, quote, pursue new opportunities in motorsport. Honestly, I'm kind of not surprised that he's decided to move on after Mercedes' move of putting Kimi in the car, but that is just me. There is also more Mick news for anybody who cares to know. Mick has confirmed that he is going to be back at it again with Alpine Endurance in the 2025 season for WEC. As a WEC girly, I am just so friggin' hype for this news.
I'm really excited for Mick and this big change in his career. I'm really hoping all the best of luck, as all the other PGB girlies are too, because who doesn't want to see that kid succeed in some sort of racing series? But moving on to the specialty lids of the weekend, I have to start off with Franco's lid for this weekend. It is paying homage to the Argentinian national football team from their victory at the 2022 World Cup victory in Qatar. Like, what a beauty, besides like the flags and everything at the back of the lid. You see the team with like Messi and the actual like World Cup trophy. I just love it. I'm obsessed.
Honestly, it's such a gorgeous lid. I kind of wish it had a little tiny bit more gold to it for some of the accents, but that's just me personally. But I'm somebody who likes a little sparkle to a helmet, especially if it's a specialty helmet. I just feel like a tiny bit more gold would have just made it pop more, but I feel like he does great helmets.
The fact that it was a night race, too, you would have thought he would have added a bit more sparkle since it's under the lights. But as someone who loves, I guess since Mel called it football, I'll call it football, and F1, I absolutely loved his helmet this weekend just because I grew up watching Messi, and I absolutely was so amazed when they won the World Cup in 2022. So it was cool seeing my two worlds collide.
Now, the other specialty helmet that we have that I feel like we do really need to talk about, I am really on the fence on how I feel about it, but it is George Russell's new lid for the weekend. It's the white helmet. Mercedes also was running the white race suits, which for me gave me some flashbacks and maybe some PTSD of the last time I saw Lewis in a white Mercedes racing suit, but that's a different story. But the white helmet just felt a little too simple for me. It is very George. It was very clean, very crisp, very proper, very George Russell. But I was just kind of like underwhelmed.
Now, I do love that Mercedes brought the white suits for both drivers this weekend. Again, like Amy said, it did bring a nostalgic feeling, but it was kind of interesting. If you saw the reel from Mercedes, you saw Lewis mentioning that George was back at Williams or something along the lines of that. So it was really hilarious to see that reaction between the two. Again, it was nice and clean. It's a nice and clean look. So, I mean, I liked it, but again, mixed feelings there for sure.
Now, I'm sure this will surprise absolutely nobody as the Red Bull girl, but I have to talk about it. I'm sorry, people. I know he's polarizing. I know a lot of people don't like him, but Max Verstappen's World Driver Championship Special Edition helmet absolutely killed it. I can't with y'all. Like, I feel like this man just always crushes it with a sparkly gold lid. This is the one helmet for me that I feel like I need the mini version of this helmet so bad. I'm obsessed. It's perfect. It's white. There's the gold. It's perfect. It's perfect. I feel like he really does sparkle, at least the way that I would do sparkle if I was designing someone's helmet. Not that I would ever have the opportunity to design someone's helmet, but like a girl could dream.
Seriously, it's so nice of a lid, and I do not expect any less from someone that won the championship. I mean, why not go all out and have something nice and flashy?
Now, I really do have to say, I think my favorite helmet on the grid isn't even like a new helmet for this weekend. It's just that he kept it from the previous race, and that is the fact that Lando Norris kept the inverted, or as I've dubbed it, the dark mode version of his neon helmet. It's so good. I want it to be like, I want merch. I want a sweatshirt version of it. Like, I would wear that so much. I know he did his neon sweatshirt with the kind of logo of his helmet on it, and I want like a black with like a little bit of neon. I love it. I think it came out so good.
I love all of his lids that he does, because he's another one who's just like an artist when it comes to lids. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, he always just does them so perfectly. But like you said, Amy, the inverted lid, I love it. Like, his normal helmet this season is already amazing in itself, but the dark mode version of it, I love it. It's just, I don't know what it is about it, but because it doesn't, like, you can tell it looks different, but it doesn't at the same time. I don't know. There's something about it, but I just love it so much. And I need the merch as well, because you know I will buy it as soon as it drops.
Not Meg single-handedly keeping Ellen Four in business. And Quadrant, because I know she does not discriminate on which version of Lando Norris merch it is. But we love it. I have to talk about, I think, definitely the most creative for me of a helmet design, and it really should surprise nobody to who it belongs to, and that is Valtteri Bottas. He gave us desert scene with a camel with a steak hat on it, and it was cute, it was funny, it was pretty at the same time. Of course, it was another Tiffany Cromwell design. Tiff can do no wrong. She is an absolute legend. If he is not on the grid in some way and able to have her design helmets, I really need somebody else on the grid to like call her up occasionally for just like a helmet design or two, just like for fun, because she just does such a fantastic job, and it's just her side hustle.
Now, I do have to mention Pierre's lid. He actually collabed with some Qatari artists on his two separate lids, taking inspiration from the country's heritage and the dunes of the desert in Qatar. Both are so nice. I personally like the one that he wore for the sprint. I mean, honestly, they're both nice, but I just love that like tan color. It just complemented so nicely with the pink Alpine and everything. I just love how he collabs with local artists wherever he's doing like a special helmet for that weekend, and he takes the time to give them credit and everything as well.
Honestly, for me, it's the two different lids for one race weekend that Pierre did. It's just such a power move. I also really like that they're both very, very different, which I feel like kind of makes the whole double lid concept even cooler. I'm the opposite of Mel. I really liked the one that he wore for race day. It was super, super colorful. And I really liked all of the color that it gave, because I feel like most people, it's like one singular color, and he gave us just like all of the colors. And I really can't complain. I think it was beautiful. Well done, Pierre.
Now, it's a sprint weekend, so of course, only one free practice session. We're going to keep it short because a lot went on afterwards. Your top three into FP1 was Charles, Lando, and Oscar. You know, I love seeing Charles on top. Always gives me false hope into my Delulu side.
Then we move in to sprint quali. I have a love-hate with sprint weekends, honestly, at this point. I don't know. I love them and I hate them at the same time. But in sprint quali 1, with about 5 minutes left in the session, we had Valtteri Bottas putting it P4. I see you, King. I absolutely lost my mind because it was just really, really nice to see. But then about a few minutes later, we have Oscar and Lewis giving me heart palpitations when the fact that they're at risk with 3 minutes left. Sprint weekends sometimes feel unnecessary for me because they just stress me out.
Indeed, I think they stress everyone out, but during SQ1, all I know is that Lewis was probably just so ready and thinking about how he will be at Ferrari next year, because I can tell you for sure he's over that Mercedes car. It's so hard to watch. But anyways, out of SQ1, we had Checo, Esteban, Yuki, and Zhou.
Not Checo being out again. I can't. I don't understand it. He's knocked out by Williams. Knocked out by Williams, out qualified by Liam Lawson in a V carb. What is happening at Red Bull that they're still giving this man a seat? I don't understand it. Checo, where have you gone? I don't understand it. This is not the Mexican Minister of Defense that we've seen in the past. It's concerning, actually. I will say at the end of Sprint Quali 1, I was giggling at how sassy Pierre Gasly was on his radio. Oh, good God. I mean, I'm not really all that surprised. Pierre is somebody who gives very sassy energy.
Now, going into SQ2, we just had a trend of lap time deletions into the weekend, because the first one we saw was for K-Mag for, of course, exceeding track limits.
I've said it before. I will say it again. Turn track limits into some kind of game, because it's insane. It's like every other lap, there's at least one.
And you know they're really pushing into the limit when it's just like a constant thing, because who else got a lap time deleted? Oscar. And literally there was only 2 minutes left in the session, but luckily it wasn't too bad, because out of this session was Fernando, Alex, Valtteri, Lance, and Kevin.
I honestly was shocked to see an SQ2 elimination for Alex, just because he normally, at least recently, has made it to the third part of all quali sessions. So seeing that was a bit surprising to me.
Then at the end of Sprint Quali 3, the top 10 broke down as follows, with Lando in P1, George in P2, Oscar in P3, Carlos in P4, Charles in P5, Max in P6, Lewis in P7, Liam in P8, and Nico in P9.
Liam's lap time was actually deleted after the session had ended. Of course, no surprise, there's going to be many more lap time deletions. So Nico will actually move up into P9 and Liam into P10.
Another surprise, seeing Max so low in a quali session. I mean, I knew going into the weekend they weren't pretty confident in the car at this track, but still, he's Max, and I feel like normally he always beats whatever rumors are going on about their car or whatever they speculate. But seeing, at the same time, seeing Pierre make it into the top 10 recently for quali has honestly made me so happy for him, given the struggle that just Alpine as a whole has been this year. So I'm really happy for him that they're starting to make some sort of progress, although there's only 1 week left, but maybe it's a good sign for next year.
Now, after sprint quali, it came out that 17 of the 20 drivers were going to be investigated after sprint quali for failing to follow the maximum delta time during sprint quali 1. 7 drivers would be facing the same allegations for problems in sprint quali 2. Those 7 drivers are Liam, Lance, Alex, Oscar, Charles, George, and Lewis.
I don't think anything ever came of this. At least I didn't see anything. But it probably was since there was literally the whole entire grid that needed to be penalized. So the FIA was probably like, we'll just slap on the hand and go about their day. But I feel like this was the beginning of the end this weekend for the FIA.
Indeed, it was, Meg. Now, going into the sprint, Franco and Checo each started from the pit lane. Again, Checo, you'll see what happens in a second.
Like, I mean, come on, man. Like, did he forget green means go? Like, literally. What the heck? Franco literally afterwards was like, what? Like, huh? Huh? I guess green means stop now, or green is like yellow, like slow. I don't know what's wrong with him.
See, my favorite thing is that apparently after the sprint, Horner literally even made a statement that says, doesn't he know that green means go? Like, the fact that your team boss is making that statement publicly should tell you a lot about, like, what your team thinks about you at this point.
Now, there was an onboard video that came out, and it looked like his head was tilted to the side, so a lot of people were saying that he was sleepy. Now, we know what happened the last time he fell asleep behind the wheel. George overtook him and won a race. I forgot what race it was, but it was like after a safety car. But you just see Franco just like, I'm just going to go by here. And indeed he does. Anywho, it was a great start for Lando leading the race. Now, Lewis also had a great start to the race, challenging the Ferraris and placing himself in between them into P5. Now, the wheel-to-wheel battle between him and Charles at lap 13 had me at the edge of my seat, literally. It was satisfying to watch, but also so nerve-wracking. Like, that 1644 in Ferrari collab, it's going to be wild next year. Now, Paris got a new front wing. They literally turned this sprint race into a test session. As they're seeing if Checo will get more speed, I really just have to laugh at this point. Like, I cannot defend this man anymore. I really cannot. And then Lando and Oscar switched positions to give Oscar the sprint win to, quote, payback for Brazil.
You know, I was dying on the inside because I thought something happened with his car. I was like, what is going on? Did he break down all of a sudden? Because, as I've said before, I watch his onboards in addition to the race because, you know, I just always have to know what's going on with him. And I heard Will Joseph say, finish in this order. Like, stay. Like, stay, boy. Don't move. But then he didn't. But, I don't know. It just goes to show he's a team player at the end of the day. And he is a good guy. Like, he wanted to repay the favor, even though Oscar was kind of like, I feel like after the sprint race, like, the three of them, like, Lando, Oscar, and George were all like, But I feel like that's the feeling about sprint races in general is, meh.
And then your top 8 for the sprint, the final one of the year, we had Oscar, of course, in P1, followed by Lando, George, Carlos, Charles, Lewis, Nico, and rounding out the top 8, Max. Now, going into actual quali session 1, the lap time deletions just continue because, of course, Franco had one deleted for exceeding track limits. And Lear, at this point, you're just like wondering how much will we see during quali today. And next thing you know, Lando is added to the list with literally less than 2 minutes in the session.
Now, my favorite thing is the fact that finally, through Q1 for Checo Perez, though the gap between him and Max isn't concerning at all. If you couldn't tell, that's absolutely dripping with sarcasm. I, as Mel said, there's no defending it anymore. It makes no sense. I will say the thing that warmed my heart the most was seeing both Saubers go through Q1. And honestly, I have to give a shout out to James Hinchcliffe. Hinchy, you are absolutely the number one head of the Valtteri Bottas fan club this weekend, and I loved every single second of it.
All I know is I gotta go out and buy some lotto tickets one of these days because miracles were happening with both Saubers and Checo going on to the next session.
Out for Q1 was Alex, Liam, Nico, Franco, and Esteban.
Now going into Q2, the drama just continues, especially with the FIA, because Carlos was noted for an unsafe release, but it would be investigated after the session.
Now, I am just going to read this verbatim off of my notes because I just have to. And I quote, "Aren't humans just brilliant? David Coulthard, you are just too adorable for words." But he's really right, though. Like, people who work in F1 are amazing and brilliant. And I'm always going to take an excuse to shout out the engineering teams, the strategy teams, and the mechanic teams and crews for just being literally the most brilliant bunch of people. Y'all deserve some major pay raises and or bonuses this year for sure. Then we had what I thought was going to be Checo going through to Q3, and I freaked myself out for a hot sec because I really thought I jinxed it. It kind of just feels a little too late to see him giving us performance to get him through to Q3 because he's just been so inconsistent. Because where was this during most of the friggin' season, my dude? Like, I just don't get it.
Neither will I, Amy, because honestly, it's just too little too late. And out of Q2, we had Pierre, Zhou, Valtteri, Yuki, and Lance. Now going into the final quali session of the weekend, literally George just has been on fire this whole weekend, if you ask me. Honestly, I think it's the white race suits. I really think it is. However, again, adding to that list of lap time deletions, Fernando was added. Exceeding track limits. Honestly, like at this point, like, can y'all just make the tracks a little bit wider? Like, something's got to give.
Yet another thing that I just have to read this direct quote. I am confused.com. David Coulthard, the man that you are. I can't. Y'all, I was wheezing. He just gives us so many gems of random phrases. My favorite thing is the fact that I got a text from a fellow F1 fan who watched the race later, watched quali later in the day, and just texted me, says, I am confused.com, because it's now the most applicable thing I've ever heard. And I love it. Your top 10 at the end of Q3 was as follows: Max in P1, George in P2, Lando in P3, Oscar in P4, Charles in P5, Lewis in P6, Carlos in P7, Fernando in P8, Checo in P9, and Kevin in P10.
Now, post-quali, Max actually received a one-place grid penalty for going, quote, unnecessary slow. All I have to say is, okay, FIA. That's all.
Now, we have to get into the good stuff, obviously, or race day. At the start of the race, I feel like we had really good reaction time from both George and Max and Lando. I wouldn't say that any of the three of them had like really bad reaction times, but good God, get him, Max. Lord, I love this sport sometimes, because Max was just like, so quick with trying to get ahead and get the lead from George and defending from Lando all at the same time. It was just a beautiful thing to see.
Now, of course, we couldn't have a casual lap one or a turn one because we had a yellow flag. Nico had lost control of his rear, hitting Esteban, and in turn, Esteban hitting Franco. Both cars were out on the gravel at turn 1, bringing out the first safety car. It was just straight chaos. Like, it was just insane. And fun fact, this makes it crash number 16. Yes, 1-6 for Williams of the season.
Gotta shout out my dad real quick. I was watching the race with him, and that happened, and he goes, well, after they said, oh, this is Williams' 16th crash of the season, he goes, man, they gotta replace that guy. And I go, Dad, that is the guy they replaced the guy who caused all the crashes with. And he goes, oh. So, if that doesn't describe Williams' season, then I don't know what does.
All we know for sure is those mechanics deserve like the fattest bonuses at the end of the season because the work they've put into their cars. And speaking of Williams, Alex and Stroll also made contact at some point during lap 1. Like, again, it was just straight chaos.
Then at like around, I can't remember if it was exactly lap 5 or like lap 4 going into lap 5, but seeing little Liam Lawson going off definitely for me hurt a little bit. He was able to get back into the race, which was really good, but it hurt my heart to see for a little bit. We got some seriously sassy Fernando Alonso. I feel like Fernando and Aston Martin are having some issues right now. I mean, obviously the car this season has been really not great compared to last year, but Fernando was complaining about the issues with the speed on the straights, and he called it, quote, worrying, which for me sent some alarms going off in my head. We're really hoping that Adrian Newey can get them to get it together when he joins the team next year, and that maybe Fernando will be a little less cranky. My God, it just kind of kept getting worse for Aston Martin because then we had Lance Stroll getting a 10-second penalty. Aston, guys, please get it together for next year. For the love of God. But God, one can really only hope because Fernando was really just starting to get frustrated with the car. I felt really, really bad. He was getting spicy. I understand it, but they just really haven't been able to figure it out. And at this point, like, complaining so publicly is just sometimes not worth it. We had Lewis Hamilton getting noted for a false start and receiving a 5-second penalty, which I think is kind of crazy. It almost seemed like he knew he did it too, because he came on the radio pretty quickly and said, I'm sorry, guys. So it's almost like he knew from the jump that he did a false start. I mean, he served the penalty. It is what it is.
Honestly, at this point, he's really giving that employee that no longer cares after giving their 2-week notice. Again, I know he is counting down the hours that he's leaving Mercedes to join Ferrari. Will it be better? We will have to see. But I am hopeful.
They also made a comment that could this be his last race with Mercedes? Because I know that also is a rumor going on that he's going to be replaced in Abu Dhabi by Kimi. Oh yeah, I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. Don't do that to him. That would just make it worse. Especially after today. Don't do that to that poor man. He doesn't deserve it.
Not even after today. After how many years in championships he's given that team. Let's be real here. That's not the treatment you give someone. An 8-time world champion, if you ask me. I know it's debatable. It's a hot topic. But so you don't give that type of treatment to a driver with that major team grow as much as it did and make it so marketable.
I mean, he single-handedly pretty much helped build their entire fan base and their friggin' brand. Like, most people hear Mercedes Formula One and think Lewis Hamilton. I'm sorry, but the two are synonymous.
If we're being honest here, if you think Formula One, a lot of people think Lewis Hamilton. Either him or Danny Rick. It's one or the other. It's the truth. But anywho, moving on, because we can talk about this fiasco with Mercedes all day long, if you ask me. And the fiasco just continues with Aston Martin because Lance actually DNF'd after lap 10, literally after serving his penalty.
Apparently, he reported feeling damage on the radio. Good God. Guys, please. Nui, you better get this team together. I do think there was a reason, though, that he went back out and did a lap before he retired the car. I think it has to do with the rules and regulations. I can't remember exactly what the rule is, but I know there is a reason for it.
I believe it's because it would have been added on in Abu Dhabi, that 10-second time penalty, or it would have resulted in like a grid drop for the race, so that's why they served it.
Now, the penalties just continued on for this race because Liam also received a 10-second penalty for his collision with Valtteri.
I want to know what the hell is going on with Yuki right now. Where did the pace go, V-Carb? He was doing so good. Mercedes then, of course, has to keep breaking people's hearts and give us a 7-second pit stop. Guys, what was that? Like, when Steak, who has historically had way worse pit stops than anybody else on the grid, is doing better than Mercedes, and Steak is pumping out a 2.4 second pit stop. Good God, people, what is happening?
What is happening indeed? Because Alex lost a wing mirror, a damn mirror, in the middle of the track. I just cannot.
Please tell me you guys saw the clip of it flying off, because it was honestly just one of the funniest things I think I've seen. Just because it just went boom. Like, I think that just described today. Just boom. Wing mirror off. Like, I'm honestly surprised he didn't get called in for that. Because I know sometimes they can get penalized for... So, I don't know. I just thought of that. Why didn't he get a penalty or called in? I don't know. FIA.
There's a lot of questions for the FIA after this weekend because Lewis and Carlos both suffered a puncture from the debris of that mirror. Like, right before they got the punctures, Valtteri ran over that mirror. Like, why wasn't this cleared off in an appropriate time?
Literally, what is going on in the House of Commons? I have no words. Complete and utter dumpster fire, people.
And you know it's FIA-ing because they couldn't decide if it should be a yellow, a double yellow, or it just goes back to green, and then it went back to yellow. So it's like you're asking for drivers to not follow the race orders when you're changing the flags. Especially when... I could go on a tangent about this, but when it's supposed to pop up on, like, the screen on their wheel, too, because if you're traveling at, whatever, 100, 200 miles an hour, you're not gonna see a little, like, flags being flown or the things that pop up on the side of the track. You're relying on your engineer and the thing on your wheel. And if that doesn't pop up, you're probably not going to see anything, especially because the FIA couldn't make up their minds about what they wanted to do. That's my soapbox. And I will get back on it later. Don't you worry. But, FIA. So many things could have been avoided if they just took care of that damn wing mirror.
I know I'm not the only one who has missed having Meg on a podcast. But what the heck was that pit stop, Ferrari? Oh my God. Oy vey. I have no, what is happening? I know it's the end of the season. I get it. It's been a long season, people. Like, everybody looks drained as hell. I get it. It's been a really long season. But what is happening?
A little too much is going on because, I get it. They're exhausted, the time changes and everything. But, at this point, afterwards, a safety car finally came off to clean off that damn debris off the track. Again, why did it take so long to make that decision? The FIA. It's at this point, we're just gonna have to square up on site. Because afterwards, something that was so funny to hear was George's radio about him changing onto the hards. Like, hearing him curse over the radio is so funny because he's so posh and proper.
He is so posh. Like, damn, you know it's bad when George Russell is cursing.
Now, again, the questions of over the weekend kept on coming up because literally, Fernando, my biggest question of the weekend, why on earth were you going wheel to wheel with Kevin down the pits? My good sir. What were you thinking?
In the pit lane. Like, I wish people could have seen my face. I have no words. Yet another catchphrase comes out of an F1 TV stream. Thank you. I can't remember which pundit gave us this gem, but the windjometer. Yes. So perfect. But Checo randomly like dropping down in the order. What the heck was going on? I feel like I have said that like 800 times this episode. If someone wants to do a count, feel free.
He said he lost drive, but honestly, after watching the replay, it just looked like he spun out and gave up. Like, I don't even know what to say about that man anymore, other than we need to be done.
You know, Disney's probably looking at him and like, maybe we need to consider that money we're giving Red Bull and give it to someone else. But anywho, speaking of spinning out and just losing control, Nico beached into the gravel, thus making him and Checo out of the race. I don't even know how many DNFs we had at this point. Like, it's been a lot. Meg is telling me 5. I think it was a total of 5. It was just chaotic. And, of course, speaking of chaos, Lando was put under investigation for failing to slow down under the yellow flags, and he was granted a 10-second stop-and-go penalty. A bit, interesting, if you ask me.
The penalty also had to have been served within 2 laps. The crazy thing about this is the fact that it seemed like a new penalty. Like, you know it's really bad when the whole F1 TV team is in utter shock and confusion. Like, when David Coulthard himself, a man who has 30 plus years of experience in F1, is perplexed by a decision, you know it's really bad.
It's not a new penalty. It just hasn't been given out in a long time because it is a harsh penalty. Especially when, in the end, it actually turns out to be more like a 30-second penalty or like a 35-second penalty. Especially with what happened today. Lando lost 35 seconds, even though he was supposed to only lose 10. But I don't know. I think Andreas Della said it best. It's like the FIA just dusted off a book, looked for whatever they thought fit it, and said, "Here you go." So... You know I had things to say, and I've calmed down since, but not really.
If we're being honest, I don't think none of us has, because the penalties just kept on coming even afterwards, because a drive-through penalty was given to Lewis for speeding in the pit lane. Like, I literally just cannot anymore. It just looked like they were just opening up the rule book and it was just like, la la la, okay, this one to this driver, next.
Now, my favorite thing to have happened all race is kind of a twofer. It's the fact that we got Zhou Guanyu cursing on the radio. Like, I feel like that doesn't happen very often, and I love it. But also, like, Zhou in the points? Absolutely hell yeah. I love that. Points for Zhou and points for Sauber, like, I will take it.
Now, what killed me this whole weekend, besides everything of the drama, was Lewis wanting to retire out of the race at a certain point, and Mercedes were like, no, you can keep on going. Literally had me dead.
The crazier thing is the fact that he wanted to retire the car, and then he's told no, and like 20 seconds later you're telling him to retire the car. I don't understand.
it's the way that they never retired. Like, Mercedes, what is going on? Like, Lewis Leary said, was like, you're not going to tell me what to do now that you guys told me not to at first, and now you guys want me to. Like, I love that for him.
It's the way he really said screw you and stayed out. Like, I absolutely iconic. One of the only few drivers who I think could probably get away with doing that to their team. But oh my god, I love Kevin Magnussen. That man's radio messages at the end just send me into orbit, and I love him so very much.
If we're being honest here, I've been in orbit this whole race. Like, it just was so wild. And then again, the penalties just continued because a 10-second penalty was given to Alex for his incident with K-Mag. I believe it was K-Mag. It was one of the Haas's. Now, finally, we made it to the final lap, and the race finishes in your top three. Of course, Max and P1, followed by Charles and Oscar finishing out the podium. Now, Ferrari takes the fight for constructors to the very last race of the season, to next weekend in Abu Dhabi. And honestly, the highlight of my weekend was seeing Joe finishing the points. Literally just makes me so happy for him. And I mean, it just shows what kind of driver he is. He was able to put that tractor in the points, finally.
Your driver of the day was Zhou Guanyu, which was, of course, like beyond deserved, if you ask me. Fastest lap went to Lando Norris.
Now, literally post-race, George received a 5-second penalty for a safety car infringement, but luckily for him, it doesn't affect his finishing position.
And apparently Oscar Piastri was also being investigated after the race for his pit entry pre-race. I don't know what's come of that post-race as of 9:01 p.m. on Sunday. We don't know. So I have no updates for y'all. I'm so very sorry. We do also have some more post-race kind of breaking news or rumors because it was featured on the F1 TV team. There were some interviews, and that is the fact that rumor has it that Esteban Ocon and Alpine will potentially be parting ways after this race weekend. Yes, this race weekend. Some things say that the team isn't happy with him. Other things are saying that Esteban wants out. Either way, leaving with one final race in the season, it just doesn't add up to me. It makes no sense at all. I personally wonder if Flavio Briatore has anything to do with this. I don't really know. The only thing that I have seen more recently too when we started recording our episode was rumors that kind of stated that if Esteban is deciding to step down, it's because it would allow him to take part in the Haas post-season testing.
I just have a question for y'all. Do we think McLaren will question the FIA or the stewards after today? Like, I mentioned Stella's post-race interview earlier on, but I thought he said it perfectly and described what happened today perfectly. So if you haven't heard it, I'd recommend going and taking a listen. And, like, yeah, Lando, he did a bad thing. Like, you obviously need to lift and slow down when there's a yellow because it means dangerous situation. But you need to look at the circumstance and judge the penalty based on that. I don't know. What do you guys think will come of today? Just because I also know that the FIA is not saying anything about the race until tomorrow or this week. So
I am really interested to see what the FIA says and does. But we will just have to wait and see. Now, we do have to get into a staple of any PGP race recap, and that is predictions. If you don't follow us on Threads, what are you even doing? Please go follow us on Threads. All jokes aside, I have started trying to poll our Thread followers for their predictions, so make sure that you follow along, drop your Abu Dhabi predictions. As for mine, as always, I have pulled out my pendulum for my predictions, and I have in P1, Oscar Piastri, P2, Pierre Gasly, and P3 is Carlos Sainz.
Now, it's the final race of the season, and I'm just going to go full Delulu here. It's going to be a Ferrari 1-2 and Max in P3. Will it happen? Probably not, but I want to see my team win the constructors, so let's just go all out. Now, realistically speaking, I do see Max winning with one of the McLaren and one of the Ferrari drivers up there in P2 and P3. I am excited to see the battle for constructors at the final race, but sad to see the season end. I just hope that the race stewards and the racing director have their ish together for next weekend because, dear God, this race was just chaotic.
Mel and I are going to be fighting on this one, signing my McLaren boys to pull through next week and get that first Constructors' Championship title since '98. They honestly deserve it after the major comeback they've had this year, considering their car was a tractor at this point last year. Like a literal tractor. So, they deserve something. Maybe not the team, but Lando and Oscar, definitely, and the people back at the factory. I also need Lando to win, or at least finish ahead of Charles, so he can keep his P2 in the Drivers' Championship. I don't know. I like them both, so I don't really care, but obviously I would love to see Lando finish second. But predictions for next race, I'm going to go McLaren 1-2 and George in P3, just since George has been on fire, it seems like, recently. So, we'll see. And to close out the episode, we have a moment of the weekend. And our moment of the weekend is our girl, Abby Pulling, winning the 2024 F1 Academy Drivers' Championship. Yay! I love that girl. If I'm being completely honest, I think she's going to be the first woman we see in F1. I know Jessica Hawkins did a testing for Aston Martin, but I think we could actually see Abby, like, on track. Doing, like, a practice session or something. I don't know. She's just been so good in everything that she's done. She's won a British F4 race. She topped the charts in F1 Academy. She finished on a podium every single race this season and won most of those races. And she also topped the timing charts during the Formula E women's test. She does have a fully funded seat next year in GP3, but I have seen some rumors online that they could see Abby going to F3 instead. So we'll have to see what she does next year. But we love you, Abby, from PGP, and thank you for liking my tweet. I appreciate it.
Meg, I love you. We know we aren't alone in feeling that that was one of the crazier races we've seen this season penalty-wise. Let us know your final predictions for Abu Dhabi on our socials. Everywhere we are Paddock Girls Podcast, except for Twitter, and now we are on Blue Sky, where we are Paddock Girls Pod. We will see you in Abu Dhabi. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.